Hello, you are tuned into Mind Renewal Ministry, where science, mental health, and the gospel meet, and where you're able to experience transformation and a changed life. I am Sanya Duki, and with me here we have
Courtney Dookie.
And Rolando Hyman.
So we're happy to be back with you this week with another intriguing conversation, I believe, which is very fitting for the time and of what we're going through right now. We're in the season of what? Corona? I call it a season because we gotta wait until it passes, right? We have to sit this one through. And so we've been talking about how to find meaning or meaning making in our life situation. And as mentioned in the last session, we've been discussing a very profound author and a psychiatrist, and someone who walked through crisis himself, Viktor Frankl. So this week we're going to be discussing how to find meaning. First of all, what is meaning and how to find meaning in our life situation, in today's life situation. Yes.
And, that's a question that many of us we have grappled with. People ask us, what's the meaning of their lives? And it's a philosophical question that's been debated, been discussed in many circles. Now, what is the meaning of life? And if there is a meaning of life, how do we find that meaning? And as you mentioned before, Viktor Frankl is no stranger to finding meaning in circumstances that are unpleasant, circumstances that were out of his control. But as we talk tonight, we're going to figure out that even though there were some circumstances outside of his control, the meaning he brought into those circumstances made a huge difference in how he lived his life.
Yes.
And for me, why I'm excited about tonight, Sanya and Courtney, is that this is a question that we all ask. Life is a journey. And on this journey, it would seem unusual if we don't stop and ask, okay, what's the meaning of this?
Yeah.
And so I too am very excited just to see where we're going to go this evening with this discussion.
And so my first question to you guys is, when it comes to finding meaning, whose responsibility is it to find meaning? Whose responsibility is it?
Well, to answer your question in one word, it's my responsibility. It's mine. I am responsible for that, and there are multiple. For myself as a Christian, there is one way to find that meaning. For others who are not, maybe there are other ways that they find meaning. But ultimately, it is my responsibility. Meaning comes from an internal locus of control. And that's so from my perspective, I think meaning making and meaning finding starts with an internal reflection.
And I'm hoping, Courtney, as you say that our discussion this evening can help persons, because there are some persons who, if you ask that question, they will say, I don't know. Okay? And that seems to be a popular response that I find I get a lot of in my own way, in my practice. You ask persons questions, so what does this mean? I don't know. What are your plans? How are you going to deal with this? I don't know.
Right.
And so I'm hoping that tonight we can help bring some light to this question.
Yes. And so tonight we're going to be exploring three major things that Viktor Frankl suggests that we can do in terms of finding meaning. So we're going to get into that. Yeah. But first, I just wanted to put that question out there from the get-go, right? Who is it that is responsible for finding meaning because of what society really exerts on us on a day-to-day basis, right? Society tells us how to respond to things. Society tells us how to interpret situations that happen around us. We have the influence of the media, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep, right? If you're not a news person, you're going to find it on Instagram. You're going to find it on Twitter. You're going to find it on Facebook. And even if you're not any of those type of people, you're going to find some way. Somebody's going to call you.
Don't forget Snapchat.
Oh, man, I tell you, the list goes on.
Goes on and on.
But is it necessary? Is it something that we need to do? Do we need to go on this search for meaning, or can we just get away with just living life just like that?
I share with you Viktor Frankl answer to sort of that question. When he was asked, is this really important, this man's search for meaning, is it really important? His response to the question was, well, the book became a bestseller because of its name. The very title of it, Man's Search for Meaning, became a bestseller. So there is already an inherent answer in just the title of the book. If it became a bestseller, it means that when people look at it, they're searching for something. They're searching for a meaning. So just by seeing the title of a book, Man's Search for Meaning, people run towards it and it became a bestseller. So it suggests to us that people are searching, people are looking, and especially in a time like where we live in now, it becomes even a more pertinent question because with coronavirus, meaning making will change drastically because out of every life's challenge, out of every crisis, out of every difficulties, you will find that meaning becomes a whole different thing. And that was profound when he said, well, if you think about it, for Viktor Frankl, he said that I never intended for this book to be a bestseller. Actually, I never even want to put my name to it. I just wanted to write it anonymously, leave it out there. And he was convinced by his friends to attach his name to it. And then it became a bestseller. So there's a lot in that, just that idea, how the book became a bestseller. When you ask a question, is this thing something we need? Where do we find it? Is it important? This idea of finding meaning in life.
It's critical, Courtney, because as you mentioned, this COVID-19 pandemic that we're presently going through, there are so many things that's happening currently in people's lives. Something could be happening in your life as you're listening to our presentation, and people are now scrambling because a lot of things that they once thought made them have meaning,
right,
is for some persons they're slowly watching it fade away in the distance. So does that mean that meaning has totally been lost? Or, how are they going to get back to that place? So I'm excited tonight to talk, to see if we can really help bring some hope amidst.
I like the word, some hope.
Hopelessness. Yeah.
That's something he alluded to.
Yes. Time and time again, it's one of the big pillars of Frankl thing. If you think about him in a concentration camp, and what I want us to do is, we can look at Viktor Frankl's story, but we're going through a crisis today, right? Right now, the world is at a crisis.
Yes,
point.
people are losing their jobs, and people are losing loved ones.
Yes.
We have to take a moment to recognize the seriousness of this. People are hurting as a result of this, and there are many people out there, they do not know how they're going to get their next rent, or pay their next mortgage, right? So it's real. A lot of individuals, they're at home now with their family, and a lot of things, that struggles that may have been there is now in their face. So people are having family issues emerging as well as a result of this, right? So a lot of people are under so much pressure right now, and we really have to take into consideration of that and how hard it is really to find meaning in this situation. Even believers are some believers are asking, what's the meaning of this? You know, God, are you here? Even unbelievers are asking the same question.
And that's where the question you asked just about hope, right? Because what hope does, and even Frankl experienced what hope does, it tells you that this too shall pass.
Yes.
And that's a key thing. That's where hope is nurtured. That's where hope is fertilized. That's where hope is germinated from this mental assent, if you want to use it, from this mental assent that this too shall pass. And I know sometimes we look at our immediate circumstances, like many of those guys that Viktor Frankl talked about in the book, that they looked at their circumstances, the direness of their circumstances. And you know, one of the things that came out so profound in the book, he talked about December of 1945, Christmas, the death rate in the concentration camps went up. Like, why? Because a lot of these guys in there thought to themselves that they will not face Christmas in the camp. So they maintain hope and vigor going towards December to say, you know, this war will end before Christmas, that we can go home and be with our families. But when the war did not end in December or that Christmas, the death rate went up because people lost hope. So that's a power of having this assent, this reality that this too shall pass. We may not know when, we may not even know the how, but what we do know is that it will come to an end. And that's the root of hope. And for someone going through challenges with COVID-19, it's for us to sit back and reflect and know that this too shall pass. The suffering, the challenges of financial difficulties, other health challenges. You might have a loved one, a grandmother, a grandfather, a brother, a sister, an uncle, a nephew, a sister, a friend who is going through this now. Just know that this too shall pass.
You know, it's you know, Courtney, as you're mentioning that, you know, it takes me back when it says, and it came to pass. Hope, you know, Pilgrim's Progress. You know, I remember the story where Hopeful and Christian were crossing a great big mighty river. And Christian, you know, lost sight of the reality of what's going on. They were shouting, I'm sinking, I'm perishing, and Hope shouted to him and said, hey, refocus, don't lose sight. And right now, I believe that what's going to be critical is our hope has got to go beyond where our imagination stops. For some of us, hope is, you know what, I can see myself doing this for another month. But for some of us, hope is, you know what, I can see myself doing this one day at a time. When will it end? I'm not worried about that. I'm doing this one day at a time as I work on self-preservation and continue to practice and go through. And that is what makes a difference with someone, because for some persons, hope has an ending point, a starting and ending point. For some persons, hope is infinity.
And you, as you said, hope is infinity. Coronavirus is not infinity. We human beings, we're very resilient, and we have gone through tragic times in history. This is not our first rodeo. the human race, we've gone through many challenges over the years, and we came out on top.
Yes. Yeah.
We're still mindful that people are still in pain and they're hurting, and some of us might lose loved ones. That's painful. But human beings, and Viktor Frankl brings that out so much in his book, that human beings, we are very resilient. We put our minds to it, we can surmount our circumstances. And that's powerful to know if we instill that hope in ourselves. And that's the hope. We are hoping that our viewers will even get a taste of that hope. And I just want to bring this out. You notice we're having a discussion using Viktor Frankl book, and Sanya alluded to it before, that Viktor Frankl was no stranger to suffering. You're talking about a man who went through the Holocaust, who every day they woke up. He woke up, he's thinking of a concentration camp. It's possible for me to go there. And we're talking about he was in a concentration camp when typhus fever broke out. And that was killing, typhus fever or killing more people than probably the concentration camp itself, the gas chamber at sometimes. So we have two crises going on in the same thing, and this man is trying to paint a picture.
Side here, you're on that side here.
And he's trying to paint a picture of hope for us in that. So he's no stranger to crisis like what we're going through, and we're hoping to use his words, his recommendation, his suggestion. How do we find hope? How do we move into this mind frame of finding hope, which is a pivotal part of finding meaning?
Yeah. So I made some notes while I was reading there. I just wanted to share. It says the meaning of life, it differs from person to person, from day to day, hour to hour. It also says, or he also says, that what matters is not the meaning of life in general. Because as you were mentioning earlier, Rolando, that we tend to have a finishing point or an end point sometime when we think, right? But he's saying it's not about finding meaning in life in general, but rather in the specific meaning of a person's life at a given moment. And it's really important to keep that in mind, because situations change, right? And that is why we get so disappointed, because we have this big picture of what 2020 is going to look like. Think about it. A lot of us had New Year's resolution. We're supposed to be in the gym right now, losing those calories, right? But instead we're home watching a video, scrolling here and there, eating chips maybe.
Keeping company with the calories.
With the calories, right? We had plans. We had so many plans for 2020. And of course, 2020 is not done yet, right? We're not sure. We don't know how it's going to unfold. But he's saying that in order for us to find fulfillment in the meaning we make, we got to do it moment by moment. We got to be in the present. Be okay with the present. Find meaning in the present, right? And he also says that everyone needs to find their unique meaning and find fulfillment in it, because we tend to go out on a quest. I gotta solve this problem, and we're stuck up here in our mind, but our heart is not connected. And because our heart is not connected, we kind of lose our way. We get detached really from our personal journey when you think about it. And we do experience that too, when in our personal work and our connection with clients that we work with, is that we are so much up here trying to figure things out, trying to solve problems, trying to solve this next problem here and there, that we lose connection with who we are and enjoy the moment, right?
It seems like we're spending some time defining this idea, just the idea of finding meaning.
Yes.
And I remember this. I took this quotation from the book, and I think Hyman alluded to it somewhat earlier. I just like to read it for us. It says, "Life is not primarily a quest for pleasure. It's not primarily a quest for pleasure. It's not primarily a quest for power, but it's a quest for meaning." You notice how he dissected, right? It's not pleasure, because many of us, we tend to search for meaning in things that pleases us, pleasure. I get my home, my job, my car, all these things. And we're seeing what COVID-19 can do to a house. Well, you stay at home in there, but you can't go to the work that you may find meaning in. You can't do the things that brings you pleasure, all those things. And he's saying, look, it's not in pleasure. A lot of people find meaning try to find meaning in being powerful, right? And he's saying it's not power either. So, the primary quest for life is not the quest for power or the quest of pleasure. It's a quest for meaning. I just find that profound, because we're spending this session just talking about meaning, finding meaning. And I just, we can break that down if you want, but the idea, in facing COVID-19, we're learning a few things. At least for myself. And I know from a lot of other people, we're learning some things about this. One of the things we're learning is that the things that we enjoy, the pleasurable things, in crisis like this, don't get me wrong, we still need to find some pleasurable things to do during this crisis. But that's not the quest of life.
It's a part of it, but it's not the whole thing.
It's not the whole thing.
It's as I'm listening, guys, there are two things that I'm reflecting on. Number one is what Sanya alluded to earlier as it relates to in the moment. It sounds like we're talking about self-awareness. Being conscious, paying attention to what's going on is critical. And then if I were to talk a little bit about the primary quest and finding meaning, we live in a community right now where meaning is defined by materialistic gain. It's as clear as crystal.
Yes.
As crystal, right? That's what defines meaning. How much academic success I've had, what materials do I have,
And that's what's been imposed on us. And for myself, I have a passion for families, right? And, as a parent, I'm asking myself, how am I teaching my child to find meaning in their existence? And how am I making that foundation to their life? So when they're able to go out, explore, think on their own and relate to the world, they're able to be on that track. Of course, as a parent, you can't really predict. You can't program your children. Sometimes we wish we could, but you can't really. But what are the things that we can do to undo what society has been telling us, right? And to start a new generation where we're teaching our children as well that, meaning is much more than what is imposed on us, the way we're told we should think, we should act, right? It is definitely in the way we make of it, what we make of it. And I'm really excited because the next session it balances out this, because it doesn't encourage self-centeredness, and I just love that. So I'm waiting for the next session. We're gonna talk about these.
If I were to jump in there, one of the things, Courtney, Sanya, and you probably can relate or speak a little bit about is I realize that we talk a lot about peer pressure. We talk about peer pressure affecting teens, but I've realized more and more that peer pressure affects professional, mature people a whole lot more than it does kids. So I'm wondering if there's a name that you call the adult version of peer pressure, because that's why society has become so effective in I think changing the way we put meaning. Then the word meaning,
It's a
it's
vicious
it's so loaded,
Yes.
Courtney, as you're saying, because meaning now, maybe if you fill up the studio here with people, you'll get a different perspective as to what meaning and what that looks like. And so, can we exhaust this topic? Maybe not.
Okay. Well, one of the
You
things, I share this with you. Viktor Frankl said that when we have, and he used the word inner strength, almost as another phrase for meaning. And he says, when we have this inner strength or this meaning, it gives human being a power, an internal power that takes them above their external circumstances. I know our viewers are watching this and they may be wondering, where do I get that internal power from? And we've alluded to hope and different things and having hope that this will come to an end. But sometimes, as I reflect on it and we're here discussing it and we're looking at meaning, and I'm excited for the next one, as Sanya said, because I think we're going to talk about three things, three fundamental things that we can use to find meaning. But just this one idea that, hey, there's an inner strength that meaning, when I have that meaning, it gives me an inner strength that helps me to surmount, to go over the hurdle of my external circumstances. And I don't really, my circumstances is different dealing with COVID-19. And we're all dealing with it differently and on different level. But if we can dig deep into ourselves, I'm going to ask my viewers one question. Reflect on your life. Reflect on previous crises that you have been through. Just go back. What were some of the resources, some of the tools? What was it that got you through those crises before? Because we've all gone through crisis. In other words, we already have the power within ourselves to deal with the crisis at hand. COVID-19 is another crisis. We have gone through many crises. Let's go back into the reservoir of our resources and pull out those things we've used in time past. Yes, and used in time past to deal with crisis.
Yes.
Because as I said before, human beings, we are resilient and we'll get through it.
Yes, and it's just another thing to remember that, when we're when we're looking in the face of crisis, we tend to believe that this is the all and the end all. And so I just wanted to help you to get some perspective there that, as we mentioned before, in the past, there have been flu pandemic. Millions of people died, and unfortunately, fortunately here we haven't reached that number, right? I was listening to the history there. Millions of people died, or 1 million people died every week back then, right? In that flu pandemic, and so we haven't reached that, right? And we're hoping it doesn't. But people were resilient back then. We had different crises that happened to us when, I won't tell you guys my age, when the planes went crashing in the towers, but that was crisis too, and everybody thought that the world was going to come to an end. We passed through that, right? And personally for myself, 3 years ago, the town in which we live now, the whole town had to evacuate in one day because of the fire that went on the town, burning houses and, destroying possessions and so forth. And that was crisis. It was crisis for me. My husband, on the other hand, had a different experience, right? And, that's why we got to keep this in mind as well, that crisis, it will pass. It's not going to last forever. We have our own perspective at what it is. We find our own meaning in it. And the last thing that I wanted to share with us is that there is a recipe that's already provided for us through scripture, right? When we face crisis, there is hope, eternal hope. And there is someone that is never changing. Never changing, right? And for me, that one is Jesus Christ. And so I wanted to share that with you. And also, when you get the chance, one of the wisest men that ever lived, King Solomon, he wrote the book of Ecclesiastics. Have a read of that book. And, you know, he talked about the same thing, basically what we're talking about right now, right? And he's saying, you know, at the core, there's one thing that remains and still stands, is our connection and our divine connection with our power source, which is God. So I'm not sure if there's anything else that you guys want to share, but we want to end right here today, because for our next session, we're going to be talking about the essence of existence and what 3 things we can do. We're going to give you practical strategies now, and also why these strategies will help you mentally, spiritually, and physically, on how to find meaning, and not just to find meaning for the fun of it, but also to find fulfillment in this meaning.
I just want to end our session by saying, you know what? I remember Jesus on the lake in the midst of a storm, and he pronounced these 3 words: peace, be still. We can have that peace today.
Yes.
And I hope that you will share into that peace. Peace, peace be still in the midst of COVID-19.
And we're praying for you. We're praying for you. So that's it for now. And until next time, we hope you have a wonderful, wonderful time. Just being grounded in yourself and trying to see where your journey in life is taking you. Take care, and we will see you again.
Right.